All right, how's it going, guys? Steve, Interglobal Comics. So I want to go ahead and make a video going over some of the sales from the Heritage Foreign Comic Auction. I had actually made, or kind of started recording a video kind of right after the auction, but then I was like, you know what? I don't want to sound too pessimistic and too much like a jerk, because I was like, I'm pretty sure everyone was pretty disappointed with how the auction results went. So I sat back and thought about it for about 24 hours, and then I was like, all right, I think I've had time to process it. We'll go through some of these sales and kind of figure it out. So overall, my feeling are pretty negative about how that sale went. I don't think Heritage did anything to really promote the auction. I don't think they went into any of the history of any of the books. I think it's really hard for people that aren't into foreign comics to understand how important some of those books were, without any like historical references or really really any information, besides what's on that CGC label. So really, in hindsight, probably Heritage wouldn't be the best place to sell these books. Unfortunately, there's a number of guys that had a lot of money invested in that auction, and I think most of them are going to break even or come out on top. But there's also some guys I'm pretty sure that are going to end up owing Heritage money after it's all said and done. I don't think I'm not really. I don't know those people that would be owing money, but whoever owned all those Superman Action Comics that were selling for $50 a pop or less, I mean that you lost money there just by slabbing and pressing and cleaning those books and then submitting to Heritage and them taking their cut. Any of those books that sold for probably less than $100 is whoever's book those were, they're in the negative, unfortunately. But it is what it is. I learned a lesson. I didn't submit anything. I was kind of not skeptical, but just unsure of how this auction would go. And then after the wedding issue sold at Heritage, the non-canon Spider-Man wedding issue for almost $15,000, I was pretty much convinced that this auction was going to go really well. And really, people have been hyping it up, and I fell for it too. I was just like, okay, these people are so confident that this book is going to hit $20,000. This book's going to hit $10,000, $5,000. I was like, let's see what happens. So I think this auction was really just a reality check, I think, for a lot of people. I'm thankful that I didn't submit anything, because I would have been pretty miserable with the results those books got, even though probably more than likely I would have come out on the positive end of things. To me, it wouldn't have been worth the time and effort I have in my comics to sell for cheaper than what you can sell on eBay. Some of these books you could relist on eBay and double your money, probably, if not more. So we'll get started. We're gonna go with like kind of the lowest prices to the highest. So starting here with the Italian Modern Captain Marvel 14. This one has sold on eBay Raw very recently for $100. So for this book, $34 for an 8.5. This was a loss for the seller. They would have been better off putting this on eBay for $200 and just waiting for it to sell. So yeah, unfortunately, not a good sale for that seller. Beautiful book though, 8.5, not the highest grade for a modern book, but still a good looking book. He-Man Masters of the Universe 1 from Germany. This is kind of like a thicker trade paperback. 9.8, $38. That was an abysmal sale. These have sold on eBay, and I've actually sold one myself for $300. And so this is that's raw. So a 9.8 should have sold for, north of $300 at least, I would think. You can't even buy these off German eBay for less than $100-$200. So this was a major loss for the seller, unfortunately. This is something that I guess should have been on American eBay rather than Heritage. these are limited, I think, to 222 copies. It's in the world, and it's a classic, modern. It's a very highly sought after cover. So yeah, for $38, that's a bummer for sure. And here we've got the Wolverine 1 from Spain, restored. Why this was sent in for this auction, I have no idea, and that's kind of some part of the problem. There was just too much fluff, too much crap that no one really wanted. So to have people sit through that long auction to have to actually get to the good books, it just wasn't a smart way to do it. So this sold for $39. This book, probably you couldn't even sell it for $10 raw if you wanted to. So yeah, it didn't really belong in this auction. World's Finest 47. So the reason I had this one is because I'm the one that sold this book to the person that submitted it. And they probably thought this book would fetch a few $100s at this auction. I sold it to them for $50, and it sold for $69. So they pressed it, cleaned it, slabbed it, and sold it. And so this was definitely a loss. Not going to be a huge loss, but it's still a loss. Better off just selling that comic on eBay. Definitely a bummer. So this one, Fantastic Four #1 from Italy. This one got a green label because it doesn't include the poster or the stickers, which basically none of them do in Italy, and it's almost impossible to find one that has the stickers and poster. And if it does have it, you're going to be paying a whole lot of money for it. So this one sold for $75. You'd be hard pressed to find this probably on Italian eBay in Italy for that price, not let alone slabbed and a 6.5. So this was not a good sale. Anytime that you're able to purchase a foreign comic in the respective country it came from for less than it's selling for on an American market, especially the market where it's supposed to be filled with all the biggest heavy hitters of the of the comic community, that's just not working out. This is the Nimbo Kid, I'll Be Falco #1. So this is the #1 issue of the Superman comics in Italy. It says restored, but it is this one sold for $99. I'm not exactly sure what the restoration was, but I can tell you that you probably couldn't buy this in Italy for $99. This was another one of those books that for whatever reason sold cheaper on the American market than it does in Italy. And I get that it's not like a key to Americans, but like I said on the last comic, it's like anything that's typically there's always like the American premium, because when the book's already in America, it's going to go for a premium. So to see books going for less than they do in their respective country is just very interesting. All right, so this is a 2.5 X-Men 94 from Spain. Beautiful redrawn painted cover by Lopez Espy. This one went for $119. So this one, I'd say is a pretty fair price. These, they're not easy to find, but 2.5 is pretty low grade. You could probably find a better copy than this. So $119, sounds fair. Although this is a magazine-sized book, so it's a magazine-sized slab, and anyone that's submitted a magazine-sized book knows that they take forever. So just the amount of time that it would take to re-slab one of these books, if you wanted it slabbed, it's better just to buy this one for $119. Why not? That's pretty cheap. This is Ghost Rider 1 from Brazil. It's sold for $134. It's kind of like a digest size book. I think these are pretty thick as well. Cool book, 5.0. Seems pretty cheap. I would think if this was a raw book selling on eBay, it would probably sell for around this price or maybe a little bit more. Another one, Silver Surfer 4 from Brazil. Another one that probably you couldn't. This one would probably definitely sell for more on eBay in the whether it's slabbed, unslabbed. Probably this slab you could probably get $300 for it if you sold it on eBay. Raw, you probably get about this price on eBay. I'm not exactly sure what Heritage's fees were. From my understanding, it's it just depends, I guess, on who was submitting books. So that's another kind of weird thing. It's not like a set fee. Some people got really great deals and really low fees. Other people got probably just the regular fees, that they would, I guess, that they start at. So I'm not exactly sure how comparable the fees are to eBay, but that's something I can look into. But yeah, this is an easy book to find. I haven't seen very many of these come to market, so 144, that just seemed a little cheap. So this is a Special Strange 24, which is the Giant Size X-Men from France. These have sold raw on eBay for about this price. Normally right around $100. Like I said, these are one of those books that used to be able to find for a few bucks, flip them for $30. But they've definitely gone up in price in France and in America. So this one I thought, would have potential to, kind of hit a little harder on Heritage. But it didn't really, so this one, sold for $149. So, another one that, that one probably sold for right about what you'd be able to sell it on eBay or in a private deal. So not a bad price for whoever bought it. Probably didn't work out too well for whoever submitted it, but not terrible. Batman 189 Danish edition, first appearance of Scarecrow. So this is a book from Silver Age 1968, sold for $150 slab 4.5. I haven't seen one of these for sale in the foreign comic group for close to this price in a while, unless they're like trashed. So to see one that's slabbed and in pretty decent condition go for this cheap, it's kind of weird. Like I said, I wish I would have taken this auction more serious. I had, like I said, convinced myself that this was like out of my league. This was where the big boys play, and I wasn't going to be able to afford any of these books. Had I known this auction was going to go how it went, I would have had probably set aside a couple $1,000s and been buying up as much as I could. But it is what it is. I wish I would have bid on some of these. I was actually stuck at work, but at least I got to watch some of it and kind of see how it all went down, the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. Fantastic 29. This is first appearance of Hawkeye. This is like a magazine-sized book from the UK. It's sold for $159 and pretty high grade, 7.5. I sold one that was probably about the same grade but raw for I think $100 last year. So again, this is another one that went pretty cheap. Pretty much this stuff was basically just selling for like the going rate of what these books would normally go for raw. So after pressing, cleaning, and slabbing them, it's just it's a head scratcher why these didn't sell for more. Conan 1 6.0 from Portugal. Cool book. They kind of like recolored the cover. Sold for $159. This one, these aren't easy to find. Portuguese comics, not Brazilian, but these are actually from Portugal. They tend to not be that plentiful. They're not that easy to find. So this one, surprised it didn't go for more. And it's Conan. Conan seems to be a pretty popular character. So $159, pretty good deal for whoever bought that. 9.8 Ultimate Fallout 4 from Russia. This one was printed in 2020, sold for $169. That's way less, I think, than they had been selling for on eBay. I think some of these had sold on eBay for $500-600 slabbed. I know you can't even buy this from the seller in Russia that is still able to ship these out. There's only one guy now that's still selling Russian comics out of Russia, and his going rate's $250. So a 9.8 slabbed in America already, probably clean press, slabbed at auction, sold for $169. It's not a good sale. Another Russian $169, ASM 128. I'm pretty sure I've seen these sell on American eBay. 9.8s of these sell for closer to $300 to $400 range. So another one that took a pretty huge tumble at Heritage. This is one that I really wanted. I should have just been watching it and pulled my phone out real quick and bid on it, because it's, like I said, is one that I've been looking for. I've been looking. I added an Iron Man 55 to my collection, but not really trying to spend too much money on it. But this sold for under $200, a 5.0 Heritage from Canada. So yeah, these are difficult books to find. Yeah, some have recently sold on eBay, but they were pulled from a bind, and I think this one, I don't believe was pulled from a bind, but it was, in better condition than the ones I had seen sell on eBay and for less money. Although there was one that was sold for like $40, but that was kind of like an anomaly. That was super cheap on eBay. Turkish 9.9 Hulk 181. This was printed last year, sold for 192. To me that should be probably about the going rate for that book. Yeah, it's 9.9, but it's like a super modern book that I think there's a number of 9.9s and a whole bunch of 9.8s on it. So not that rare, not that nothing too crazy. For a Hulk 181 collector to get that 9.9 would be probably great to add to the collection. This probably could have sold, I would say, for probably $500 on eBay, but yeah, took a hit on heritage. 6.0 Fantastic 452, first appearance of Black Panther. 6.0 is not a high grade for Germany, and you can find books in 8s and 9s, 7, 8s, 9s in Germany still. But 204, it seems like not a bad sale, not a great sale. Probably some have sold for about that price on eBay. Whatever reason, the Fantastic 452 just doesn't seem to be as popular of a book. I guess ever since Chadwick Boseman died, I guess people are just kind of worried about the future of that character. I don't think it changes anything, and it's going to be different going on. I haven't seen the new movie yet, but it doesn't change the fact that he was great in the first movie and in the Avenger movies. So he's going to be a classic, much loved character for a long time to come. New Teen Titans 32 Indonesian edition sold for $216. 7.0. So really anything from Indonesia in that grade, that's like pretty high grade, nosebleed high grade for an Indonesian book. So $216, pretty cheap for a very hard to find book. Getting anything out of Indonesia is pretty tough. Brazilian Ultimate Fallout 4 9.4. So this one, and I really don't think was actually a bad sale. This was, these I owned, I think at one point, like 4 of these Ultimate Fallout 4 Brazilian editions, and for whatever reason people just weren't interested in the Brazilian. I don't know why, but I had a hard time selling my extra copies for $75 to $100 a piece. So 9.4 slabbed, $216. It's not a great sale, but not terrible. Hopefully that seller was able to make a little bit of money. Fantastic Four. This is Fantastic Four number 5, first appearance of Doom. But since it's a redrawn cover, they go by the Spanish title Las Four Fantásticos number 3, from Spain, printed in 1969. This is their first appearance of Doctor Doom. This one went for $240. So it's kind of cool to see one of these little Spanish Digest books do pretty well in the auction, and you could probably find these on the Spanish marketplace for probably still $10 to $20, $10 to $30 for like a nice looking copy. So not a bad price for that one. $240, for something that you could still find fairly cheap now. Adam Hughes signed 9.8 Superman 43. This is like the classic modern Supergirl cover. $240 seems pretty cheap. Not exactly sure what these sell for, the American editions sell for, but I would think signed by Adam Hughes and a 9.8, should have gotten more money. And to me, it just seems like the modern stuff just didn't do very well. It wasn't the right audience. It doesn't seem, and as a whole, the audience didn't really seem to grasp what they were really looking at with these foreign books. So hopefully people that actually collect foreigns were able to snag a few deals, because they were definitely out there. Die Spiny. This is Amazing Spider-Man 50 from Germany. This one sold for $252. 7.5. That's pretty good grade. Getting pretty close to high grade there. So not a bad price. I feel like the German books did okay. They've always been kind of considered fairly plentiful, so that kind of has kept the prices down. So to see some go for a few $100s is good to see. Brazilian Spider-Man 6. This was printed in 1973. 7.0, which is like very considered high grade for Brazil, sold for $252. That seems really low compared to, probably the American price of this book. The first appearance of Lizard, seems like this one should have definitely sold higher. So this one is just kind of interesting. This is Argentinian Spider-Man 54. These books were supplements in El Tony newspaper, and they're really cool books, great colors, great print quality. And I was interested to see what these would go for, because I have kind of like a run of them that I bought on from someone in Argentina, and I was just curious what they would sell for. And mine aren't 9.2. Mine isn't. None of mine are 9.2s, but they're probably closer to like 7s and 8s. So I thought about seeing if there's a market for them. So I was pretty happy to see these kind of random non-key issues sell in the 150 to 250 range. This one obviously is pretty high grade, so that one got a little bit more money. But $264, not a bad deal. For a book that was printed in the late 60s. It's a Silver Age book. Another high-grade Brazilian that went for way less money than it should have. Spider-Man 15 from Brazil, first appearance of Craven. Here's another. This is the Swedish edition of the Batman 189, first appearance of Scarecrow. So I think the other one was Danish. So this one also went pretty inexpensive. I don't think you could find this, from a Swedish seller for this price. $264. Spawn 5 German edition, 9.8. Like the embossed cover, went about half of what it sells for on eBay. I think there was one that sold recently for the 450 to 480 range on eBay, and that was just in the last month or two. So this one went way cheaper at $264. Brave and the Bold 54, 8.5, which seems really high grade for a book from 1964. This is a first Teen Titans. It seems like this should have gone for probably a little bit more. I'm not sure if people just didn't like the digest size books or what, because some of these Italian books went kind of cheap. But yeah, 8.5, $275. So this is another one, another Brazilian book that kind of seemed like it went too cheap. First appearance of Vulture, Amazing Spider-Man 2. This is actually a book that used to be mine, and I sold it to the same guy I sold that World's Finest comic to, and he submitted it to the auction. I think I sold this to him for like $100. So he made probably a little bit of money on this one. But still, it seems like first appearance of Vulture, Spider-Man 2, this should be going for more than $288. Same thing, Spider-Man 3, Brazilian, way too cheap, $288. Ghost Rider 1 from Mexico, real hard to find book, kind of like a strange size. I think I've seen these sell up for as high as $500. This one sold for $312. And the other thing I guess I should add too, I feel like a lot of these books that I'm showing, really very rarely or have never come to the market publicly. So that's why it's kind of just weird. You would think this is like probably the first buying opportunity for a lot of these books for people that, could be interested in foreign comics or just interested in learning more about them. And like here you are offering kind of some of the cream of the crop of foreign comics, and to see them sell for half price. It's hard to kind of figure out what's going on. X-Men 94. So this one actually went higher than I thought. 7.5. That's a good grade for a Greek book. But this one went for almost $350. So you could find these. They pop up on American eBay every once in a while, or if you can find a source in Greece that can get you books. This one probably you could get for less than $100 still. So this one went for a decent price. Not a bad sale. Hopefully the seller was happy with that. This one was another one that I think's not that hard to find for still a decent price. This grade 4.5 is nothing too crazy. So to have this Dutch book sell for $384, I think that was a good sale for whoever sold that one. Tomb of Dracula, 5.5. So it's kind of like mid grade. Obviously not low, or obviously not high grade book, because German books do have some pretty high grade books on the census. But 384, that's pretty cheap. Especially considering that I think it was just last year one of these sold for I think a couple $1,000s. So that it just makes you wonder if some of these crazy sales that foreigners were having, like, did that actually happen? What was going on with those? Because some of those were just kind of like insane. This was Amazing Spider-Man 129 from Finland. This is like a later print from 1994, really cool black and white cover, 9.8, sold for $432. These sell raw now on eBay for $300 to $400. So this was a great deal for someone to get a 9.8 at $432. Brazilian 181, first appearance of Poison Ivy, $432. These books, probably. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to find this from a Brazilian seller trying to sell you one at this price these days anymore. I think this is one of the books that has really dried up in Brazil. It has gotten really hard to find, really hard to source. So $432, that's pretty cheap for a 5.5. German Avengers 1 sold for $456. Not a bad price, because this would be, I'd consider, kind of mid to lower grade. So $456, seems like a good sale for whoever sold that one. I think these on German eBay are right around €100, maybe a little bit less depending on the condition, or more if they're high grade. So $456 for 4.0 sounds kind of about right. Batman 227 from Brazil, 6.5 is considered high grade. Tough book to find, tough book to source, and definitely a tough book to find in good condition. So $468 seems a little cheap. I feel like the Brazilian sellers are selling these for between $300-400 raw, and you're purchasing it directly from Brazil. So you always got to deal with shipping issues or customs. So this doesn't. This still seems cheap. Doctor Strange 169, 7.5. I'm pretty sure this is the highest one on the census, because I used to have the highest. I think I have a 6.5 or a 7.0, and this sold for $480. That's incredibly cheap. For that condition, from 1969, Mexican La Prensa. I sold one raw that was not this shape, but probably closer to a 5.0, and I sold that one for $300 last year. So for this to sell at $480 just seems too cheap. You're probably gonna hear me say that 100 times in this video. Sorry to repeat myself. Avengers 1 from Brazil, 6.0. So that's a pretty high grade for a Brazilian book from the 70s. This one sold for $504. So that's a good sale. There hasn't really been too many of these have sold on the American marketplace. I had one sell, I think, on eBay for $100, or maybe it was like $150. But then the buyer got it, and he didn't realize that it was a digest sized book. I guess maybe I forgot to add that in the listing, but he actually returned it to me because he was upset that it was digest sized, which I don't really understand, because why are you buying comics that you don't know anything about? But I guess that just happens more often than not. But it worked out because, I ended up selling it to a foreign comic collector that knows what he was buying and was very happy to have it at that price. And here we are, now that book's worth, considerably more, at least on Heritage it was. Action Comics 242, 5.0 went for $552. This one was kind of a low sale, I thought. There was a 7.0 that sold on eBay. Can't really remember the price. I thought it sold for closer to $2,000, but other people were telling me it sold for like $1,300 or $1,400. So $550 seems too cheap for this book, and for this grade, an American copy would probably be a few $1,000s. So this one just seems to be going it went too cheap in my opinion. Hulk. This is the Hulk 181 from Canada, and French Canadian Not sure if people really realized what they were bidding on, if they knew this was Hulk 181 or not, just because the label doesn't say it, or I mean, the label says it in the like the key comments, but the label doesn't say Hulk 181. 552. That was actually a pretty good sale for this book. I mean, raw they've been selling for $300-$400 I think lately. So 3.5 is not like a high grade at all, but it's it's in a slab, and hard to find book. So $550. Hopefully the seller was happy with that. I mean, probably not a bad purchase either for the buyer. So super high grade, or not super, but pretty high grade, Batman 181 from Brazil, 552. Definitely thought this book would hit closer to 1,000. Pretty surprised to see it only hit half of that. This one's a real bummer for me. Superman 61, which is the Action Comics 252. Never seen one for sale on the American market. Never seen one for sale on eBay. Only ever heard of maybe a few private deals. There's probably less than 5 of these in America, and this one sold for $600. I just bought one raw, and I think I paid $400 for it. And then the guy in Brazil I bought it from heard from the other Brazilian sellers that, oh, you sold it too cheap. So then he came back and messaged me and asked me for more money. And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. But whatever. So I sent him another $50 or something like that. So here we are. Apparently I didn't get it too cheap. I paid, apparently according to Heritage, I paid the market rate, because this one's $600. I would have rather had this one than the one I bought raw. Because this one's already slabbed and ready to go. But whatever. Like I said, this stuff is just, it's sold too cheap. And this should be probably closer to, I would think, $1,000 book on the American market. I know there's a guy in the group that collects a lot of DC keys. He paid $900 for his copy, not that long ago. So to see this one sell so cheap was definitely, this one kind of stung me personally a little bit. 7.0, Tales of Suspense 39, pretty decent grade, $600. That's a pretty average sale. I would say not too high, not too low. There are probably higher copies on the census, but it's a good looking book, and one that's not terribly easy to track down these days. Indonesian Star Wars 3, like the original cover, sold for $600. I thought this was pretty cool, and these books are really cool. The original artwork on the cover, every panel is redrawn on the inside, so definitely a cool kind of oddity. I've got the whole run of these Indo Star Wars books, but the real money book I think is number 2. That's the one that has like the Star Wars 1 cover on it, and these are definitely not easy to find. So $600, seems a little high, but when you really think about how hard these books are to source, sounds about right. I think that was actually a good sale. This one kind of surprised me, how high it went for 5.0. Superboy 68. This is the first appearance of Bizarro Superman. This one went for $660. So that was a solid sale. I've got one of these in pretty high grade, so I should probably get it slabbed. There's a lot of DC stuff that I have that I'm not like a huge fan of. I just collect it just because I like to have as many key comics from around the world as possible. So this is one, for $660, I would probably, I'd probably have to think twice about maybe selling it, just because, I'm not that big of a fan. I grew up more with Marvel, and in the 90s I was super into X-Men and stuff like that, so that's kind of more the 90s was my kind of peak of comic fandom. Daredevil 1 from the Netherlands, the Dutch, sold for $660. It's pretty high for that condition. I feel like you could probably find one in higher grade pretty easily. $660. These normally would sell for, I'd say, $100 to $200 raw, and they do come up for sale every once in a while on eBay. Super high grade Spider-Man 5, $690. So he seems pretty cheap, but who knows? The Brazilian books they were weird at auction. That's all, and it's basically all you can say. The prices just didn't make sense. Batman. This is Batman 251 from Lebanon, the highly sought after kind of Arabic edition, Lebanese edition, sold for $750. Seems incredibly cheap since I think there's only a handful of copies known in the world of these. So I know who won this one, so congrats to him. I'm sure he's hyped on it. And real head scratcher here, 1984 Norwegian Action Comics 1. 1984, so it's pretty much just like a kind of a more modern reprint of this book, somehow sold for $780. I'm not sure if maybe whoever purchased this didn't read the date, but whatever reason they paid that much for it, I'm not quite sure, but that's a good sale for them. Justice League, or no, what's this? Brave and the Bold 28. First appearance of Justice League. This one sold for $840. This was a 5.5 copy. Great book, not easy to find. Kind of a Brazilian grail. So this one, I'd say, it's mid-grade. Not a terrible deal. I think if you got in early on, you probably paid $300 to $400 for your copy of this. So a few years later to sell it for $840, hey, at least you double your money depending on how much you have into it. This one, Super Adventure Comic 1, doesn't really make any sense because one just sold on, I'm pretty sure it was Raw, or maybe it was Slabbed, but one just sold on Australian eBay for I think close to $2,000 like a month or two ago. So kind of crazy this one went so cheap on Heritage. Just doesn't make any sense. Iron Man 1 from Chile. Great book, extremely hard to find. This book, I think I've told the story before. Me and Josh, International Comics, both purchased one from the same seller on eBay. I think they each cost us $30 each. He had a bunch of great stuff from Chile that he was selling super cheap. So this is Josh's copy. He probably pressed it, slabbed it, and he gave it away as like a giveaway on his Whatnot, I believe. And then the guy who bought it from him listed it on eBay. I think it was for like $7,000-8,000, somewhere around there. No takers. Never sold at that price. And then I guess he decided to send it to Heritage. So it ended up selling for $1,000, which I think is a pretty great price. I think I sold my copy to John Z for around $300, I think. This sold for more than 3 times that amount, although this one was in higher grade. It still doesn't seem like a bad sale to me for a tough-to-find book. All right, well, speaking of bad sales, here's one that definitely hurt. It's the Avengers 1 from Mexico, La Prensa, printed in 1965, sold for $1,440. That just seems like way too cheap for this book. And these are just so hard to find, hard to find in decent condition. I have a copy that I paid, I think, over $300 for, and mine is like, probably a 2.5 or 3, but it's restored also. And I was buying it a couple years ago, and I bought it raw. This one went too cheap. It's great book for whoever bought it. Whoever sold it, I'm sure is not happy with that sale. Some of these Golden Age Brazilian books I don't really know anything about, honestly. So I think this one was like the first appearance of Lex Luthor, I think, inside. So this one sold for $1440 from 1941, Blue Label. Another one that went, fairly cheap. I think a lot of people expected this one to go really high, signed by Stan Lee, but $1,500, I don't know, it doesn't seem like a terrible deal. Probably the seller wasn't too happy with that price, but it doesn't seem like a terrible price. And Avengers 4 isn't, as massive of a key as I think it, because it's not the first appearance of Captain America. It's the first appearance of Silver Age Captain America. So, it's a great book, but I think that price isn't too bad. This one I think is not that great, though. 8.5 Spider-Man 1 from Brazil. Probably never going to find a copy better looking than this. There was 2.5 or two 8.5s that sold recently. This one and another one. The other one sold for $3,000 at Heritage, and this one a month later sold for $252. I'm surprised at Heritage why these aren't $5,000 books, but it is what it is. And I've got like a 4.0 of this book, and I feel like I wouldn't sell it for less than $1,000. So I thought this would be kind of like the big book of the auction, and it didn't really go as high as I thought. That's for sure. Brave and the Bold 28, massive high grade copy, sold for $2,880. This was the one that was listed for $30,000 on eBay. Obviously, I don't think the seller expected to get that much money for it. They were just kind of just feeling out the market and hoping to get offers. But I think they definitely expected to get more than this amount. I thought this book would sell for $5,000 to $10,000, honestly. So definitely, like I said, maybe I just got caught up in the hype, the hype train that was going on about this auction. I was convinced that these books that people were buying for $300, $400, $500, 5 years ago, were all of a sudden going to be worth $10,000. But who knows? This one just seemed too cheap though. 8.0 from Brazil, that's definitely high grade. It's gonna be tough to ever beat that. And here's one that was pretty surprising for me in a good way. Super Hombre 1 from Spain, sold for $3,120. I know for a fact there's one of these sitting on Todo Colección right now. That's a whole run of them for a third of the price of this one. So if someone's interested and smart, they could probably buy that whole run and flip them pretty easily. But yeah, $3,000. That's a pretty good deal. I've seen these sell on the Spanish market for $100 or less. So definitely something I'm going to be keeping my eye out for in the future. All right, and $3,600. That's the first appearance of Robin for the Brazilian market. Kind of classic cover. I'm pretty sure it was. I don't know if it was redrawn. It just looks different. Probably redrawn and edited. But $3,600. I think that definitely the seller of that book was hoping for more. I'm not sure what the American version goes for, but I'm sure it's a lot more than this. And I'm sure there's some disappointment going on with these books, because I think this book, the seller of this book probably made some money. I think they expected much more than what this book got. This was definitely the surprise of the auction. Journey into Mystery 85, first appearance of Loki, Brazilian edition, somehow, and 7.0, somehow outsold Spider-Man 1. I don't understand how this would outsell like all those, every one of those Spider-Man villain first appearances sold for less than $300-$400, and this first appearance of Loki sold for $4,000. So not really sure why. And this is from 1967, so it's not really that much older than any of the other books. So yeah, just kind of a weird curiosity. Not really sure why this one went so high, but it did. So for whatever reason, this was the big sale, I'd say, of the auction. All right, and the final book in the auction I'm going to talk about was the Superman Action Comics page from Mexico, Paquito 255, which has, I think, page number 3 from Action Comics on the back cover. This was kind of like the big book of the auction, what Heritage used pretty much on all their promo and as like the main picture of the auction. So I think there was high hopes for this. And it sold well, $6,600, and for a page of Action Comics, that's, I think pretty great. It's not an American page, so yeah, had this been a page of Action Comics 1 from America, it would have sold for who knows how much money, tens of thousands of dollars. But this is kind of still a newer market, and foreign comics is not, something that's very widely known or collected. So it's just something that's going to take time. The more people we get in the hobby, the better off it's going to be. So yeah, and I heard crazy prices being thrown around for this book, $20,000, $30,000. And in my head, I was like, these guys got to be tripping to be thinking this book's going to get that much. Me personally, I wouldn't probably pay more than $500 for this book. But I also don't collect Superman, Golden Age. I don't collect any of that stuff. That's like the big boy league, and that's not my wheelhouse. So, that's why I just wasn't really even sure what this would sell for. So I just kind of listened to those guys that seem to know what they're talking about. So in my head, I was like, maybe it'll hit. I was talking to a friend in Singapore, and we were, kind of speculating on what we thought it would go for. And I said, I figured around, I think 10 to 15,000, and he thought less. And it ended up being less. It ended up being $6,600. I bet the buyer's probably, happy at that price. It's a cool book, a cool piece of comic book history. I'm sure the seller's not very happy with that. We all know this was Josh's book. I have no idea what he has into it, how much he paid for it. I'm sure it was way, 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 way less than $6,600. So, for that, I'm sure he's happy. He's going to make money on it. I'm sure he's disappointed that it could have been a much bigger sale. But, it was just the unknown. We just didn't know what was going to happen in this auction, and here we are, So I think really kind of, my takeaway from the whole thing is that had it not been so hyped up and so many people talking about how crazy the prices are going to be and all the whales are going to come out and spend all their money on all these books, I feel like if there hadn't been that hype, I probably would have been like, oh, wow, that was a great auction. But there was so much hype and talk about how much money all these books were going to bring that when it didn't happen, it was almost more of a letdown. So I think that's kind of my takeaway is just to kind of, with foreign comics in general for selling, you just got to keep your expectations kind of in check. It is a very niche hobby. There's a potential to make money. Like I said, depending on how you do it, the majority of people I know that buy and sell foreign comics, they don't really have to spend any money out of their own pocket. That's the way to do it. If you're not, if you're able to buy and sell and keep upgrading your books, then you're doing it right. But that's how I have to do it. I don't want to spend my extra income, extra money on comic books. I love comic books. I love collecting them. I love foreign comics, but it's not something I would just spend, $50,000 a year on like I do. But because I do buy and sell, that makes it easier for me to do that. So, I've been able to amass a collection pretty quickly and cheaply by buying and selling comics, but I've always had a pretty, I think, conservative perspective on it. And I also, it helps that you actually love the comics that you're trying to sell. So my thing would just be that if you love foreign comics, spend whatever you want on them. If you want to spend $1,000, fine. If you want to spend $5,000, great. If you want to spend $5, sure. But, if you love what you're buying, it doesn't matter what it sells for, because more than likely you're not going to sell it anyways. So just buy what you like. So that's pretty much my perspective on it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will hopefully make another eBay market report sooner than later. I kind of put that on hold to make this one. So we'll go from there. All right, have a great day. Bye.